One of the greatest inventions introduced to the fandom world is that of the fanfiction story. This gives fans the opportunity to change any number of things from the way an episode ended to adding a totally new storyline or character to a show. Some of you may have heard me say in the past that I cut my teeth in this particular fandom by writing fanfic for it and posting it on Bonanza World. Rest in peace, you beautiful forum site. So, in honor of my former pastime, I thought I would occasionally review fanfic stories on this channel. If all goes well, I would love to keep doing this, so if you wrote a story or know of one you'd like me to take a look at, drop a link in my inbox and I'll check it out. If we get to 3,000 subscribers, maybe I'll review one of my own for you and suffer in the humiliation of my own roasting. I want to give a huge shout out to longtime viewer and friend of the podcast, Melissa Rowe, for volunteering as our very first adventure into these waters with her story, Vengeance is Mine, a WHI, or What Happened Instead of, the Season 14 two-parter episodes, Forever. As a brief summary for the original storyline, since I will be reviewing those someday too, Joe actually walks down the aisle for realsies. He marries Alice Harper, who recently moved to Virginia City with her brother, a huge gambler in debt to some pretty bad people, who later kill Alice while trying to rob her as payment for John's debts. So yeah, Joe does get married, but it doesn't last long. Now let's dive into Melissa's story, and along the way I'll tell you what she kept from the original episodes and what she changed. A link to her story will be in the comments, so please check it out for yourselves. We open with a bit of a recap for the original story with a nice little change. That being, the pregnant Alice Cartwright survives the break-in by Damien, a sinister man who has the makings of a serial killer if I ever saw one. I'm using sinister to describe him, as Melissa does in her story, because I honestly can't think of a better word for him than that. The actor who plays him in the show, Larry Golden, has eyes and mannerisms that make you want to look away and hope he never makes direct eye contact with the camera. In the story, Damien demands from Alice a music box given to her on their wedding night by Joe. In the beginning, as in the episode, she refuses. Her brother finally grows a spine and defends her. He's killed right in front of her. In the show, she never does give up the box, an act that drives many fans crazy, including me. As she is pregnant after all, her life is worth more than the box. Thankfully, our author writes this by making her see that. She hands over the box and demands that they leave. Damien obliges. Another change from the show is the addition of a brother for Damien who is waiting outside for them. Melissa notes in his internal monologue that this brother, called Clyde, is only half-brothers with Damien. They share a father. This caught my attention as I believe it's intentional, and a mirror of Joe and one of his brothers with whom he shares a father. Stick a pin in that. Those brothers adored each other, at least most of the time. These two seem not to care very much for each other. You might even say there's already some animosity brewing. Joe returns home with Jamie and Candy only to find Alice still on the floor crying beside her brother's body. She explains that they not only got away with what was once Joe's mother's music box, but also the diamond necklace inside. Another point taken directly from the show. Joe, of course, wants to chase after the men right that minute. It's getting dark, and Candy is the voice of reason in Joe's irate chaos, telling Joe that it's best to wait until first light to get Sheriff Clem involved. Joe relents and asks Candy to ride for a doctor and meet them at Ben's. Alice tries to wave him off, but Joe insists. And you know what? So do I. You're pregnant, woman. The kid might be a Cartwright, but their mother just witnessed the murder of their uncle. I'm using the pronoun they here because as yet we don't know whether the child is a boy or a girl. I just gotta say, me being the unforgiving sort that I am, I hope Marie put some sort of New Orleans voodoo curse on that box so that if it's ever stolen, the thief turns into a zombie. Yeah, wait a minute. Maybe we don't want to risk that, with Damien's henchman Hadley at least, turning into a zombie. He's bad enough as he is. Candy and Jamie take care of John's body, and Joe leads Alice out of the house and over to Paws. Joe paces until the doctor comes out and assures him that both she and the baby are going to be okay. He's given her something to help her sleep. She's just about done with her first trimester at this point, we learn. That's probably for the best. When Joe gets downstairs to walk the doc out, a familiar face is waiting for them. The bona fide hazel-eyed heartthrob himself, Adam Cartwright, has returned. See why I love fanfiction so much? Ben introduces Adam to the doctor like they don't know each other very well. Melissa calls him Doc Martin. We know in the show that they knew each other very well. Then again, she does say he's been gone a few years at this point and hasn't made many trips home, so I'm assuming that's why Ben says it like that. Doc leaves and Joe and Adam embrace. And I'm not crying. You're crying. Adam's internal monologue has him note that Joe's big enough now to beat him in one of their notorious fights, and I laughed so loud when I read that. Adam had business in his good old stomping grounds and came by. I couldn't help but feel sad when he mentioned that he'd heard about Joe's wedding. All of us fans wish he'd gotten to be there. Joe mentions getting away with Alice for a while when she's feeling better after John's funeral. Better do it now while you still can travel, I guess. Adam seems to have settled down in Boston, as he mentions it's a long trip back. Ben insists that he stay the night, and he relents. They mention Adam has a wife too, and her name is Emily, and he informs them that she's now expecting a child as well. Ben gets 2 grandbabies for the price of 1. Adam quips at Joe's becoming a father in a fun little exchange. Then the two gang up on Ben about getting married again. No one mentions Jamie or Hoss at this point. Hoss would have passed in the last year or so about, I think, so maybe Adam had already gotten back for his funeral. I hope so. Joe checks on Alice and she wakes up, so they talk a little. That was 1 week sedative, Doc. She insists Joe doesn't have to go to that much trouble for her brother because of what he had done. She still has a little bit of that shame in her from him, after all that he put her through. She does finally acknowledge, though, that he kept things from her because he did care about her. Joe and Alice plan to visit San Francisco after the funeral. The following morning, the family gathers around John's grave. Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd," is read aloud by the preacher. John is buried near their home, and the couple leaves for their baby moon? Hank, one of Damien's men who was involved in the robbery and murder on the Ponderosa, recognizes them as Joe and Alice exit the stage in San Francisco. It seems they had the same idea and had ended up in Frisco shortly before, and Damien left his brother out of the personal party in the saloon. Just when you think that maybe Clyde has some sort of sympathy for Alice because he doesn't want to tell Damien he saw them, Clyde makes it clear he's willing to do what Damien didn't. Get rid of the only witness. Joe and Alice get settled in the hotel room, and Alice realizes she has nothing to wear to dinner that fits right in her condition. I guess that trip really was sudden. Joe offers to take her shopping. What a guy. She's on dress number 8, and he's being laughed at by a sales rep for having to wait all day by the time the experience is over. In the original episode, Alice is working at a dress shop in Virginia City when Joe asks her out for the first time. This time around, she's the customer, second-guessing herself several times. He yes-honeys her until he can't take it anymore and begins to grow more impatient. And I'm laughing at him too by now. I'm sorry, Joe. Hey, the man is ready to buy her an entire store, but I'm going to suggest that he not do that. She'll never make up her mind if she has an entire store to choose from. 2 boxes later, they're walking down the street when someone comes flying out of the saloon. Joe pulls her back and she warns him in a very wifely way not to bother checking out the chaos. Don't get involved, sweetie. Suddenly, a familiar voice agrees with her. I love this scene because my heart actually sank thinking it was going to be Damien. It wasn't. The jump scare was older brother Adam. Joe accuses him of checking up on him and goes into a speech about how he can take care of himself and he's a big boy, until the saloon girl runs over to him, having recognized him. Daisy makes a big show of it until he awkwardly introduces her to his pregnant wife, who he then proceeds to hide behind until she goes away. Alice takes it all in stride and goes on ahead to the hotel. Adam teases Joe a little bit more before taking his own leave. Alice teases Joe still more in the hotel room until he leaves to wait in the lobby. She's alone when she hears a music box tune. In the original episode, when Joe and Candy go off looking for Alice and John's killers, he finds a saloon girl with the music box. Here, Alice finds the same woman with it and inquires about it. She quickly drops the subject, though, and doesn't say a word of it to Joe at dinner. Later that night in bed, Joe's talking about how different his and Adam's feelings are about the city. She denies that there's anything bothering her when he asks. As Joe falls asleep, Alice thinks that she isn't sure it was their music box, and she uses that as a reason why not to tell Joe. Just the idea that a dangerous man like Damien might be in the same place as them would be enough for me to at least mention it to my husband. But what do I know? The next day, Joe is in a store buying some things for Ben, and Alice is window shopping when Clyde corners her. See, that's what I know. That's why I thought that. Alice. He says she's that girl his brother has taken a fancy to. I don't think you're on the mark there, Clyde. Damien only fancies Damien. At any rate, he grabs her arm. He shouts at her and demands to know what she told Joe or if she told the law. Dude, stop making a scene before you get caught. Oh, never mind. Too late. Clyde goes to shoot Alice and someone shoots him first. Turns out, while Clyde was following Joe and Alice, Adam was following Clyde. I knew we hadn't seen the last of him. Hey, baby! Alice still doesn't fess up to Adam about the music box either. When they find Joe, though, she finally does come clean, and he's rightfully confused about why he's just now hearing about this. She apologizes, and they decide to head home. Hank, the other member of Damien's group from before, saw the whole thing and goes straight to Damien. I guess if Clyde had let him do that in the first place, Clyde himself might actually still be alive. Because Hank did want to go to Damien. Clyde's the one that said no. Damien isn't at all pleased, and just as in the show, nearly has Hadley kill him until Hank apologizes. Well, at least in this version, he spared the wine poured on his head. Adam sticks around the Ponderosa for a while after they report the situation to Clem. Joe and Alice go full nesting mode in preparation for the baby. They're having trouble thinking of names for the baby, and I have an idea if it's a boy. But we'll have to see what happens. She insists on not letting him help her make lunch. Their playful banter is interrupted by a knock. Damien's men break in. This time the jump scare really was him. Joe wings one of them. Hadley overpowers Joe, though, and knocks him out. They take Alice and leave Joe lying there. He wakes up with Candy and Jamie beside him. Joe hurries to go after them and find Alice. We discover that Ben is in Carson, and Joe thinks to go to Adam, who is still supposed to be in town. Joe tells Jamie first to go home and wait for Ben. Then he tells him to send a wire to Ben. I assume he meant those two things in the reverse order, but it's a tough situation, so I can understand why he was confused. When they're headed out the door, Clem is on the other side of it. He explains that they caught one of Damien's men, somehow? At the jail, the man refuses to talk, and Joe tries attacking him through the cell. He caves pretty easily after that, admitting that Damien just wants the man who killed his brother. I feel like he should have just told them that in the first place. Wouldn't Damien want them to know that? Damien is headed toward Sacramento? Talk about going the long way around. The man taunts him about what Damien could do to Alice, and Joe lunges back at him until Candy pulls him off. Then they head out. Okay, so Adam is the one they want for killing Damien's brother, but they hole up in a hotel in Sacramento while Adam is staying in Virginia City. Maybe they don't know that, but the master plan is beginning to look a little bit moth-eaten. Alice is in the hotel room, and one of the men is harassing her. She isn't sure whether Joe survived the attack when they kidnapped her. Alice fights back and even talks with a bit of sarcasm she must have learned from her in-laws. I'm proud of you, girl. Damien finally puts a stop to the harassment. Sloane, the one who was bothering Alice, fears for his life now. That fear proves to be rational as Hanley drags him away, and we never hear from him again except for one final scream. Joe and Candy search every town between home and Sacramento. Finally, they camp overnight before heading there. At last, Joe mentions Hoss, if only in his thoughts. Candy makes him a plate of beans, and he reluctantly eats. Candy reassures him enough to get him through the night. Weird that we still don't know if anybody told Adam Damien wants revenge on him. Or did they? Damien is impatient to meet up with Joe, but he's the one making it hard for Joe to catch up with him. I guess you can't reason with a nutcase. He and Hadley take Alice along to find fresh water, leaving the others to meet Joe and kill whoever is with him. Again, not the Cartwright they're supposed to be looking for. What do they want Joe for? Joe and Candy make it to find the others, who catch Candy sneaking in. Crap. Joe surrenders to save Candy. Candy pulls some great moves, though, and overpowers the men. Love it. One is killed, and the other is only wounded. They demand answers from the one who's still alive. Against Candy's better judgment, Joe leaves him with the wounded man and heads to meet Damien by himself. Damien sees Joe before Joe sees him and pulls a gun on him, calling for Hanley to bring Alice out. Damien says this line about how his brother basically got his stupid from their daddy, and I am dying over here. I don't get to laugh for very long, though, because it turns out Damien has had Adam since the night before, when Adam took matters into his own hands and went after them alone. He's beaten and tied up when Damien presents him to Joe. He also presents Joe with a choice. Joe is made to choose between Adam and Alice. Now we know why he wanted Joe. Adam speaks up and uses some psychology on Damien, and hey, it works. Well, in a way. While Adam makes Damien angry by calling him too much of a coward to do his own killing, Damien then insults Hanley. Hanley has had enough and takes Damien down with a rock to the Kukinagan. Kind of like the way the original episode ends. They get away, and Candy finally meets Adam officially. They seem to hit it off rather well, as I always knew that they would, if they ever did meet. Candy even explains the nickname for the army fort he grew up in, as he does in the show. The remaining men are taken to Clem, who informs Joe that the necklace was never recovered. Joe really isn't bothered by that at this point. They meet Adam outside the jail, who seems reluctant to head back and say goodbye at first, but agrees. We cut to months later. Adam is back home in Boston. The others are working when Joe heads home to check on Alice. While he's there, she goes into labor. He runs out for the doctor and scrapes for Ben on the way like he does in the original episode when he tells Benny that she's pregnant. Into the night, Joe holds her hand until it's time, and the doctor ushers him out. Very soon after, Joe's daughter is born. Little Sarah Marie is introduced to her family, including her godfather, Candy. Beautiful gesture, and I admit I got teary. A week later, Joe is in his old room, and Ben presents him with a big box of things for the baby. They casually mention that Adam Cartwright Jr. has also been born. Now, if you've seen the Bonanza sequel movies, you recognize these names already. Sarah and AC are two of the characters in those movies, the children of Joe and Adam, respectively. Ben makes a little quip about Joe's comeuppance with all of those girl daddies he worried back in his wilder days. Now he's one of them. Jamie interrupts their tender moment to tell Ben a man from the Cattlemen's Association is here to see him. Joe sits alone with a photo of Hoss and thinks about how great of an uncle he would have been. Sometime later, Adam and his family have returned, and Ben watches as his entire family is gathered around him, including Alice, who is expecting once again. The family is complete. I had a great time with this one. It was fun tying elements of the prequel movies together with a scenario in which both Alice and Joe's unborn child actually survive. Melissa has been following my channel from the beginning, and I was so happy to get to see what a great writer she is. If you enjoyed following along with her work, please give her some love in the comments. This wraps up another year of the Ponderosa podcast. The channel has grown so much this year, and I'm so grateful to everyone who has come along for the ride. Happy holidays, and I will see you for another round next